Salute to you people and welcome back to another episode of Numbers Off the Hook. Today we're going to talk about multiplication, okay? And there's three different ways of writing multiplication. We can write it this way, A times B, okay? Or we can write it this way, A times B. Or we can write it this way, AB. So here we use this mini X symbol, right? Here we use the dot symbol, and here we don't use any symbol at all. So this is three different ways of writing multiplication. It's three different types of notation. You remember that? Three different types of notation. So now let's say we have 3 times 2, right? We can write it this way, for example, or we can write it as 3 times 2. It means the same thing. So this is equal to 6. So 3, the number 3 is called a factor. The number 2 is also called a factor. And the number 6 is a product. And we talked about that before, right? Product. So multiplication is taking two factors times each other, and then you get the product. So here in this case, 3 was a factor, 2 was another factor. We multiplied them, and then we got 6 as the product. Okay? So how can we interpret multiplication? I want you guys to think of it this way. Let's look at 3 times 4. What is that? Think of it as we have 3 beads. Okay, a pile here, it has 3 beads, and then we take it 4 times. Like this, right? So here we took 3 beads the first time, here we took 3 beads a second time, a third time, and a fourth time. Can you see that? 3, 3, 3, 3. So 3 times 4. Now if we count all the beads, we see that 3 times 4 is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We just count the beads. So 3 times 4 is equal to 12. This is a very useful way, we're going to see later, to think of multiplication, okay? Another way of thinking of multiplication, which is really useful, is to think of a rectangle, okay? A rectangle looks something like this, right? Now imagine this side is 4 and the short side is 3. Then the area, this is the area of the rectangle, A is equal to the width multiplied with the length, 3 times 4, which is equal to 12. So here we can think of multiplication as the area of a rectangle, okay? So guys, have you thought about what happens if you multiply with 0, okay? Let's try, for example, let's take -3 multiply with 0. Can you punch that into your calculator and have a look? Or what if we take 0 multiplied with 2000? Well, as you'll see, they're both equal to 0. Okay? So there's a rule here. There's a special rule. That if we have any number A can be any number, and we multiplied it with 0, or if we do it the other way around, we take 0 and multiplied it with a, it's always going to be equal to 0. That's the rule. So what does that mean? It means that when we're multiplying two factors, right? That's what we do. We're multiplying two factors. If one of the factors is 0, the result, the product is always going to be 0. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what a is. Okay? As long as one of the factors are 0, the product is going to be 0. That's the rule when multiplying with 0. So keep that in mind. That's very important. So now we know how to deal with 0. Now we should ask ourselves, how do we multiply positive and negative numbers with each other? This is something often that many students get confused with. So I want you guys to really master this. I want you guys to think of this as having a cheat code, right? Let's imagine you're playing a video game and then you have this cheat code. Okay? And this cheat code is like this. We have a number a, okay? We multiply it with number b, and then we get the product a times b. So this is a factor a, factor b, and the product a times b, okay? Now the cheat code states that if a is positive and b is positive, then the product is going to be positive. Okay? So it means that if we multiply two positive numbers with each other, the product is always going to be positive. Now, what happens if we multiply a positive number with a negative number? Well, then the product is going to be negative. If we do it the other way around, we take a negative number and multiply with a positive number, it's also going to be a negative number. And then the last case is when both a and b are negative, then the product is going to be positive. This is this cheat code. And it's going to help you a lot when you're doing multiplication in algebra. Okay? So let's do some examples here. Let's do some examples here. Okay, the first example, let's take 3 times 5. Okay, 3 times 5 is 15. And we see that 3 is a positive number, right? So this factor is positive. We say that 5 is a positive number, and the result 15 is also a positive number. Okay? Let's do another example. Let's do 7 times minus 2. Now we know, first we do 7 times 2. Let's ignore that minus sign first. So we know that 7 times 2 is 14. Okay? Now we're going to examine whether this is going to be a negative or positive. So we see here that 7 is a positive number. Minus 2, it's a negative number. So the result of the multiplication has to be negative. So we have to put a minus sign here. So 7 times minus 2 is equal to minus 14. Okay? Next example is, let's take minus 4 times minus 3. Okay? First we do 4. First we don't worry about the sign. We just take 4 times 3, that's 12. And now we're going to examine whether there should be a minus sign here or not. Okay, that's what we're doing. 12, just 4 times 3. Now we have a minus sign here, so this is negative times a negative. But we see here, when we take a negative number times another negative number, the result should be positive. So yeah, 12 is a positive number. So yeah, we're good. Minus 4 times minus 3 is equal to plus 12, or just 12. The last example is, let's take minus 5 times 5. Now 5 times 5 is 25. Now let's have a look at the sign. We have a minus, we have a negative number here in minus 5, and then we have a positive number here in plus 5 here. So this is a negative number times a positive number. So the result should be negative. Okay? So that's how we do multiplication with positive and negative numbers. Okay, so the next step, guys, now is how do we multiply two rational numbers? Okay, so for example, let's say we have 3, 4, and we want to multiply it with 4/3. Okay, so how do we do that? This is the rule. We put it on one line here, and then these are the numerators. So we multiply the numerators with each other, like this, 3 times 4. And then we multiply the denominators with each other. That's 4 times 3. And that's equal to 12 divided by 12. And that's a number divided by itself is always equal to 1. So that's how we multiply rational numbers. Let's do another example. Let's take 2/5 multiply with 1/2. Here we multiply the numerators, 2 times 1, and then we multiply the denominators, 5 times 2. So 2 times 1 is equal to 2, and 5 times 2 is equal to 10. Right? 10. So this could be simplified. We can divide this by 2 and this by 2. So this could be written as 1/5. Okay? So now we know how to multiply rational numbers. Okay? So the last thing, guys, we want to talk about today is something we call reciprocal. Reciprocal. There's a lot of weird words in mathematics, right? This is one of them. Reciprocal. What does that mean? It means like this. We have any number. Let's call it A, okay? But A is not equal to 0. This is very important, okay? So A is any number but 0. It's not 0, but it could be anything else. So it's a non-zero number, okay? Non-zero number, okay? Then the reciprocal is the number. We want to multiply A with something so that the result will become 1, okay? We want the product to be 1. So it turns out that if we multiply it with 1 over A, let's examine that. What happens? Well, if we multiply with 1 over A, we have this A can be written as A over 1, right? A over 1, because any number divided by 1 is equal to itself, times 1 over A. So now we have two rational numbers. We know how to multiply rational numbers. We multiply the numerators, that's A times 1, and then the denominators, that's 1 times A. But A times 1, that's simply A, right? Any number multiplied with 1 is equal to itself. Same here, 1 times A is equal to A. And then we have that a number divided by itself is always equal to 1. Okay? So we took a, we multiplied it with 1 over a, and instead of writing a, we wrote it as a over 1, because we wanted this to be a rational number in this form. Okay? And now when we have it like this, we can use what we learned before. We multiply the numerators with each other and the denominators with each other. Then we got this. And a times 1 is equal to a. 1 times a is also equal to a. And a over a, any number divided by itself, is always equal to 1. So we managed it. We found a number which made a times this number equal to 1. So what we do is we call this 1 over a, we call it the reciprocal So what we do is we call this number here the reciprocal of a. Let's do an example. Let's say we have a number 8. I just made up a number, 8. Then the reciprocal of 8 should be 1 over 8. So we multiply with 1 over 8. Let's see what happens. We use the same trick again. It's 8 over 1 times 1 over 8. Same trick again. It's 8 times 1 divided by 1 times 8, which is equal to 8 divided by 8, which is equal to 1. So we made it. So here we have that this is the reciprocal of 8. 1 over 8 is the reciprocal of 8. Finally, what if we have a rational number, something like this, 2/4? How do we get the reciprocal? Then the trick here is to flip the numerator and the denominator. So instead of writing 2/4, we're just going to write 4/2. Okay? And then if we do the multiplication, we take 2 times 4, right? We multiply the numerator and we divide it by 4 times 2. That's the denominator. And then we have 8 over 8. That's equal to 1. So this is the reciprocal of 2/4. Okay guys, so today we talked about multiplication, right? We talked about there's 3 different ways of writing multiplication, right? We can use the small x symbol, we can use the dot symbol, or we don't use anything at all. That's the 3 different way of notation, right? 3 different notation for multiplying. Then we said that when we multiply 2 numbers, we call those 2 numbers factors. And the result, we call it the product, right? Later on, we talked about the special case when one of the factors, one of the numbers that we're multiplying with is equal to 0. And then we said that the rule is that if you multiply with the 0, you always get 0. So if one of the factors is equal to 0, the product is always going to be equal to 0. After that, we talked about how to multiply positive and negative numbers with each other. And we had the cheat code to make sure that we get the right plus or minus sign. And lastly, we talked about reciprocal. And for non-zero numbers, numbers that are not equal to 0, we talked about how to find the reciprocal. So if the number is, for example, a, then 1 over a is the reciprocal of a. If we have a rational number, like 2 over 4, then we flip the denominator and the numerator. And then we get 1. So that's the reciprocal of this. So guys, I hope you enjoyed, or more importantly, I hope you learned something. And I see you at the next video when we're going to talk about division, okay? Have a nice one.